Welcome to Light Boxes, a football show. I'm your host, Rob Ballantine, and today we're previewing the NFC East. My goal with these division previews is to distill down everything that's most important about each of the teams so that you can think outside the box and have the best possible understanding about what could happen this coming season. This is my third ever video, and I'd greatly appreciate it if you liked and subscribed to the channel. It really helps get my videos out to other NFL fans like you, and if you're willing to share the video around, that would mean so much to me. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Now let's start by looking at the betting markets for the NFC East. Brief overview of how odds work. If the number has a minus in front of it, the bigger the number is, the more likely it is to happen. And if the number has a plus in front of it, the bigger the number is, the less likely it is to happen. So for the Eagles having minus 375 odds to make the playoffs, that's really likely. And the New York Giants having plus 790 odds to make the playoffs, that's really unlikely. Minus 110 is sort of the middle point where it's a coin flip on either side. So the Washington Commanders have a win total of 9.5. The over is minus 110. The under would also be minus 110. So that's the book saying it really could go equally either way. Looking at these, the Philadelphia Eagles have clear favorite status in this division. And the New York Giants aren't so hot. Now, you'll notice that to win the division, they are plus 2,500. And in the last video, the Saints, who are around as bad a team, had plus 1,200 odds to win their division. This is not implying that the Saints are twice as good as the Giants. It's reflective of how much better the teams at the top of the NFC East are than the teams at the top of the NFC South. By the way, if you want a deeper dive into how betting markets are set, I touch on that in the beginning of my NFC South video, so go back and take a look at that if you'd like a little more info. Looking at the opponents for this division, the NFC East will have to play two of the best top to bottom divisions in the NFL, the NFC North and the AFC West. That's a tough slate. Now, the Bears and the Raiders were bad last year, but they have new coaching, new energy, new outlooks. They should be much improved. And the other 6 teams between these two divisions made the playoffs. So that's rough. But luckily, when they each host an NFC West team per their unique opponents, those are all home games for our NFC East teams. Teams from the West notoriously have issues flying east and adjusting their body clock for what feels like such an early game based on where they're from. So thankfully, teams like the Giants get to host the 49ers. It's crazy that they drew the 49ers in their 4th place schedule. That's brutal, but it would be much more brutal if the Giants had to travel to Santa Clara for that game. The Giants are who we're going to start with today. This was a bad team last year, 3-14, and they're more likely to finish this upcoming season at 5-12 or worse than they are 6-11 or better, according to the odds. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are coming back for a 4th year. Whether or not that's a good idea depends on how much continued patience the owner, John Mara, is going to have in the new vision, because Brian Daboll is a pretty good coach in a lot of ways. He got the only good season out of Daniel Jones. The problem is that led to the organization tying themselves to Jones by giving him a contract extension after that year, which set a domino effect into place where they lose Saquon Barkley in free agency, and they've just been terrible because Daniel Jones isn't really that good and he hasn't stayed healthy. So that was a bad move. If they can distance themselves from that, if they got the Jackson Dart pick right that they just did this offseason, then maybe they get a year 5. But this is one of the hottest seats in all of coaching and GMing in the NFL. Now, for this divisional preview, I've changed the format up. Instead of going chronologically through each team's offseason, I'm going to highlight the good things, the bad things, and the most intriguing things about each team. I felt like this was a more clear way and more manageable way to analyze each team and really pick out the most important things to look for in the upcoming season. Starting off with something good for the Giants is that defensive line, man. That is a lethal unit. First, you got Dexter Lawrence on the interior, one of the best defensive tackles, full stop. You draft Abdul Carter 3rd overall. That was the right pick. Didn't overthink it, didn't reach for a quarterback, took a blue chip player who can help you with your pass rush. Kayvon Thibodeau is entering what's ostensibly a contract year. They picked up his fifth year option, so he's on the books till the end of 2026, but this is a pivotal time for him to play like he deserves a new contract, so hopefully he shows up. You've got Brian Burns, who you acquired for under market, trading a second round pick and a little bit of extra change. Really wasn't a bad move for getting Brian Burns. Do the Giants always think they're competing when they're not? Sure. But at least Brian Burns is on this team, can provide value. And they drafted Darius Alexander, another interior player, at the top of the 3rd round this year. I like all of these moves. I like how they fit together. I like that even if one player fails to reach their upside, most likely people are thinking Kayvon Thibodeau, there's still enough else there that they should have a good pass rush. And when you're a bad team, you need a unit you can hang your hat on if you want to steal some wins. That's this unit. This defensive line might swing some contests. Something else that's good, drafting Cam Scatterbo, 105th overall. Not a literal superstar athletic talent, but he was a college superstar last year for the impression he made, especially in ASU's playoff game against Texas last year. So the rookie's coming in and is going to be a tone setter immediately. Devin Singletary's done, and Tyrone Tracy showed some moderate flashes, but was really inconsistent, and you need a more reliable runner to be the head of your backfield. Yeah, Cam Scatterbo doesn't have the top speed you want, and so he wasn't a second round pick like some people thought he would be. But who cares? You got him at the top of the 4th round, good value, and he brings an energy to this offense and to this locker room in general that's been sorely missed. Now, on to the bad, and for the Giants, it's quite many things, but let's start with Russell Wilson. Relying on him to do anything meaningful seems pretty foolhardy. Sure, there weren't many better options on the market. Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to choose them. They would have been reaching if they took one at 3rd overall. So this was kind of maybe the best path to a week 1 starter. The issue, though, is 1, Russell Wilson's washed, but 2, his playing style is so hyper-specific, and Brian Daboll is not going to want him to play that way. Brian Daboll, for the good things about him as a coach, is extremely temperamental, and so when Russell Wilson is just forcing moonballs and when plays devolve and he's not really running the Giants offense the way Daboll wants, he's not going to take that well, and so I don't see Russell Wilson starting for a long time, and maybe they bridge the gap with Jameis Winston, who they also signed, but the issue is you want to protect them from starting Jackson Dart, their rookie, too early. Whether or not Jackson Dart's going to be good, if you start him too early, that's a disaster. So relying on Russell Wilson to fend off the rookie and fend off temptation, that seems like a recipe for disaster. Now, no matter who is playing quarterback, this offensive line is rough. Now, Andrew Thomas is a potential superstar. He's had superstar runs, but he's not healthy ever. And also, offensive line is not a unit where you just want one star and you can make do with the rest. It needs to be cohesive. There need to not be too many weak points and turnstiles. And everyone else on this line is at best average, if not well below average. Hopefully John Michael Schmitz, their center, has a turnaround, but it hasn't shown up yet. I liked him coming out of the draft, but it's been 2 years of not much. And the only investments they made this offseason were to sign Stone Forsythe to a vet minimum, their left tackle, and to draft a guard, Marcus Bowe, out of Purdue in the 5th round. I like Marcus Bowe fine as a mid-round flyer, but this was not enough investment for a unit that is needed to protect Russell Wilson and his specific playing style. It requires a longer time to throw. Jameis Winston, who if he's playing, extremely turnover prone. And then of course, any young quarterback, in this case the rookie Jackson Dart, needs a line where he can feel confident. So this is very tenuous and one of the main reasons I don't think this offense is going to get off the ground very well. Now, on to the things that are most intriguing about the Giants, and number one is, of course, the Jackson Dart timeline. When does he actually take the reins? He's not a player I highly believe in. I had him ranked in the 70s on my big board, and they took him 25th overall. But the Giants did more work on him, and if they believe in him, I'm actually fine with the price they paid. They moved up 9 spots and only gave up a 3rd-round pick to make sure they got their guy. And this regime needs to have a guy in the pipeline. Of course, teams ideally shouldn't be making moves to save their jobs, but if we look at it from the positive perspective that they believe in Dart and they think he's the guy, there are athletic traits there that could indicate that. He's got a live arm, he can scramble, then fine, I don't mind the price. But the knock on him coming out of college was that Ole Miss's offense was extremely siloed. He didn't have to make many big reads. It was often one read that was telegraphed for him, or he's bolting. And so it's going to take time. If there's patience and Jackson Dart is able to understudy for a little while and not see the field, ideally till next year, but maybe the end of this season, that could be fine. But they might be rushed into it. So that's one of the biggest things I'm looking at with the Giants. And the secondary has been shuffled around. It's kind of been musical chairs at safety, where they let Xavier McKinney walk, but then this year they signed Javon Holland because they realized their mistake. And unfortunately, Javon Holland isn't quite the player that Xavier McKinney is, yet he's making almost the same money, just one fewer year on that contract, but pretty much the same average annual value. So that's odd, but at least they're kind of righting their past wrongs in a certain way because they're both young players. They're both around 25. And then bringing in Paulson Adebo for 3 years, $54 million was certainly an investment, but that's another corner in his mid-20s. So it'll be interesting to see what they're thinking here. Now, the pass rush is so elite that they just need a competent secondary on the back end to make sure that they're not wasting that pass rush. And that could be why they felt like investing some of their cap space there. I would have invested more in offensive line, like I talked about earlier, but if this secondary is a really good unit and the pass rush is as elite as it could be, then this defense is really cooking with gas and coming together, and maybe that protects the offense a bit. For each team, I'm going to highlight the fulcrum. It's what I refer to as the person or unit that has the biggest impact on how we'll see the 2025 season. For the Giants, it's actually owner John Mara. It's really nothing happening on the field because it really depends on how John Mara views this season. That'll determine how we should feel about the progress they've made, because if they're terrible, of course they'll fire Daboll and Shane. That's fine. But if they're middling and they're showing progress, is that enough for Mara to maintain this staff? And will that be a good thing? Because you could argue that if Jackson Dart shows a little bit at the end of the season and the defense is good, things are looking up, they win 5 or 6 or 7 games, which is an improvement on last year, you should keep Shane and Daboll. But it also might be a complete false indicator of what they're really going to be, and it might just be time to cut bait anyway. So it really depends on the lens through which John Mara sees this season if we're going to think of 2025 as a success, because 2025 is a success if it sets up 2026 the right way and they don't have to start completely from scratch. The Giants' win total is 5.5. And I feel pretty safe taking the under, even though it's one of the lowest totals in the NFL, and there are always random wins that happen. Those random wins could come by virtue of that defensive line. And so while the Saints have a similar over-under as the Giants, I put the Saints way in the lead to own the number 1 pick. I think that there's no unit on the Saints where you can say they can win you a game. Maybe the wide receiver core, but that's so reliant on the quarterback. Here, the defensive line could force the right fumble, could get the right timely sack, could lead to an interception. So there's enough there with the Giants to believe they'll win probably 5 games, be a little better than last year, but still hit the under and be picking in the top 5. The Dallas Cowboys are next. This is Jerry's team. Always has been, seemingly always will be. Now, Jerry's been the general manager for almost 4 decades, but since 2017, he's had a VP of player personnel named Will McClay, who's responsible for the draft and has nailed a lot of draft picks over that span. So saying Jerry Jones does everything for this team would be wrong. But he does a damn lot, and we're going to get into that a little later. But let's start off positive here, shall we? Good piece number 1 is the upside of this defense under new defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus. Sure, Eberflus was completely outmatched with the pressure of being the Bears head coach and bringing in the new star rookie quarterback, Caleb Williams. That was a travesty, but he's a really good defensive coach. A little predictable at times, but he's put together pass rushes with less than ideal talent and knocked out some top 10 defenses along his career with the Colts and with the Bears. And Micah Parsons is by far the best pass rusher he's ever gotten to coach. There's plenty of good pieces on this defense. There's still plenty of holes. Linebacker is continually a work in progress. It was sad that DeMarvion Overshown got injured. That was looking like a promising option for them. But Eberflus should coordinate a good defense, and I think that this defense will respond to him better than they did to Mike Zimmer. And then Dak Prescott is coming back healthy. That can't be overstated, the impact of that on this team. He played like an MVP candidate in 2023. Sure, 2024 was pretty bad before he got injured, and then of course he missed most of the year with a hamstring tear. But this is a really good quarterback, and to say otherwise would just be flat out wrong. I think it's much more likely he plays like a fringe top 10 quarterback than he plays like an average or below average quarterback. No, if people are saying he's top 5 all the time, his peaks are, but he's not consistent enough, and there's too many quarterbacks who operate at a higher level more often. But Dak Prescott's best is awesome, and I think that this offense is going to allow him to continue being a great processor and let him fix a lot of the issues that there are on this team. But the roster is better on that side of the ball, so I think bringing Dak Prescott back means good things for this offense. On to the bad. And it pretty much all stems from Jerry Jones, starting with how he goes about contracts. I'm glad Dak's back. I think Dak is a good quarterback. But Jerry Jones constantly pushes these contract issues further and further down the line, which leads to the players maintaining leverage when it comes to nut crunch time, and then they get more money. I'm all happy for players getting more money. They deserve it. But this is bad for the competitive ecosystem of Dallas. Dak is making $60 million a year. That is an overpay, frankly, for him. If we look down, every other quarterback is at $55 million per year, and we can talk about Josh Allen being one who clearly earns his full $55 million, if not more. We can debate the rest, but Josh Allen definitely has earned what he's getting. And if you look at his contract hits by year, he is getting, or his cap number, much more importantly, is 36 million this year, 56 million the next year, then 53, then 59. And the Bills will constantly work with Allen to restructure his deal as it goes so that they can free up cap space to be competitive. Dak Prescott's deal is 50 million cap hit this year, so 14 million more, then 74, 68, and 78 each of the next years. So his Jerry Jones's unwillingness to move cash around and get ahead of contracts is really a big issue. And that's without mentioning the fact that Micah Parsons is probably going to become the highest paid defender in the league whenever he signs his contract. And if Jerry Jones was willing to get things done earlier, that would hopefully be more team friendly. So there's Jerry for you. And more Jerry, there's the way he went about the coaching search. It's not that Brian Schottenheimer will necessarily be a bad head coach, but Jerry has a habit of wanting yes men who he can work well with and kind of keep his thumb on as his head coach. That's why Jason Garrett lasted so long. That's why Mike McCarthy lasted so long. So it didn't feel like a wide net coaching search, especially when you end up promoting Brian Schottenheimer from within. So he could be fine, but the process is flawed, and you need good process to leave no stone unturned to really maximize your output in the NFL. This is the best quarterback situation that Schottenheimer's ever gotten to coach. So even though he was sort of below average with the Jets and Rams, and then a bit above average as an offensive coordinator with the Seahawks, that was Mark Sanchez and Sam Bradford's injury-riddled career in St. Louis. Mark Sanchez back with the Jets. And it was Russell Wilson, who is, again, hyper-specific, always has been. It worked better back when he was more mobile, but now it's a different story. But Dak Prescott is far and away the most capable quarterback that Schottenheimer's ever had. So we might see an uptick in his offensive prowess. Not sure it's going to be elite or anything. And again, Jerry decided not to even look at the elite options too hard in favor of fueling his own ego. Now, for intriguing things is how the new coaches will have an effect on the offensive line. Head coach Brian Schottenheimer will call the plays, so new OC Clayton Adams won't. But Clayton Adams will be an important game planner and offensive designer, and his background has a lot of offensive line coach in it, including, most recently, the offensive line coach for the Arizona Cardinals. And their offensive line coach is a guy named Connor Riley, who has no NFL coaching experience, but comes from Kansas State, where he was an offensive coordinator for 1 year and an offensive line coach for many years before that. He actually overlapped with Cowboys center Cooper Beebe for his whole college career. So there's going to be some cohesive language there, which could be a good thing. Offensive line has always been a calling card for the Dallas Cowboys, but the same pieces aren't there anymore. Zach Martin retired. Tyron Smith left last year in free agency. So there's not a lot that's the same from before. Tyler Smith had an all-pro season and is a really good guard, but so many other pieces are sort of in flux. Cooper Beebe's second year, we'll see how he does. Tyler Booker is a rookie at right guard. So there's a lot that's a moving part to this offensive line. But this could be cool, depending on how Clayton Adams and Connor Riley structured things, particularly in the run game, because Dak Prescott's really going to handle so much of the pass game, including the protections. And then there's the George Pickens experience, of course. What guy are the Cowboys getting? Did they trade for his talent, or did they trade for the head case that he can be? Is he going to cut down on the penalties? Is he going to show up on time? Is he not going to take plays off because he's pouting about not getting the ball enough? But if they get the right guy who's playing for a contract this year, ostensibly, because the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't want to pay him, that was the whole rub, then this could be great for the Cowboys in 2025, and maybe beyond if they feel like he's worth signing to an extension themselves. It's always risky to inherit a receiver that the Pittsburgh Steelers were willing to let go, no matter how talented he is. But that will be one of the biggest pivot points for the Cowboys this year. The fulcrum so obviously has to be George Pickens, but let's leave his attitude aside for now and just talk about his football fit. As a receiver, especially a wide receiver too, it makes a ton of sense. George Pickens can be your big X on the boundary style receiver, and CeeDee Lamb can move around the formation as your Z, even run him out of the slot. They did not, the Cowboys, have any complement like George Pickens to Lamb last year. So that's huge. The knocks on George Pickens and the things on the field that people most want him to improve upon are his ability to create consistent separation and to fix his drop rate from 2024, where he dropped 12.3% of his passes. But on the drop rate perspective, he had an elite 2% drop rate in both of his first 2 seasons in Pittsburgh. So drop rate isn't too sticky a stat. It could be totally fine. And we don't know how much of his drop rate had to do with the catchability or lack thereof of Russell Wilson's ball. I like Dak Prescott as a thrower better. And on the note of Dak Prescott, he's willing to hit a tight window more than most quarterbacks. So while I do want him to get more separation, it might not matter too much in Dallas because Dak will throw it to those spots. Now, without separation, you're lowering the percentage of completions. But I also think some of the separation will happen more naturally because Pickens has never lined up next to a receiver as good as Lamb, a receiver where the defense has to account for that player first and then Pickens second. That's never been a clear delineation before. So I think Pickens will naturally get some better separation due to easier matchups, and it might not matter as much with the Dak Prescott fit. So it makes sense on the field as long as Pickens doesn't have the same drop issues that he did last year, and he cleans that up. And of course, the off-the-field stuff. So George Pickens has to be the fulcrum for this team. With a win total of 7.5, comfortably take the over. Comfortably. There were only 4 reasons that they were under that last year, and they went 7-10, so barely under that amount last year. Dak Prescott missed 9 games. Micah Parsons missed 4. Mike Zimmer couldn't connect with his defensive players, and there was no capable wide receiver 2. George Pickens could fix the wide receiver 2 issue, and Matt Eberflus should be able to connect better with the defensive players and have a scheme that makes sense. So as long as Dak Prescott and Micah Parsons are healthy, how would they not go 8-9? I'm not going to pretend that this team's elite and that I'm picking this to be the first Cowboys squad to make the conference championship game since the 90s. Nothing like that. But this should be a good regular season team that probably competes for a wild card spot. It's time for the Washington Commanders, and what a glow up for this franchise since terrible owner Dan Snyder sold it. New majority owner Josh Harris has brought in a crew with fresh energy and fresh ideas, and of course drafting Jaden Daniels doesn't hurt. This is a really good team. Now, I have questions about Dan Quinn's ultimate ceiling as a head coach, but his ability to turn around a culture was never in question, and he's done that with Washington. Let's look at the good things about this franchise first. Let's start with the fact that Jaden Daniels uses virtual reality as a training tool regularly. I don't know why we don't talk about this every single time we bring up Jaden Daniels. The fact that when he went to LSU, he adopted a VR training regimen that allowed him to learn the playbook quicker and allowed him to go through game situations at more than 1 times speed so that when he got on the field, it felt slower. It's essentially like putting a donut on a baseball bat when you're warming up before you go up to the plate. That's an amazing thing. And the fact that when he went to Washington, he said, if you guys are taking me and you want to invest in me, you have to get this VR program. And the new ownership group said, of course, we got you. Imagine if Dan Snyder, he would never have done it. Not even once. So they invested in him and his way of learning, and that's what allowed him to exceed expectations right away. And I don't want this to sound like I'm taking away from Jaden Daniels. He's a superb athlete. He's got a good arm. He's smart. And in fact, his intelligence is displayed by the fact that he adopted this method that wasn't widely proven. Right? He knew his game was in a hole at Arizona State. And then when he transfers to LSU, he saw it as a way out of the hole, didn't take too much pride in his own ability to learn it without VR or something. So this is a testament to how great Jaden Daniels is. And it's why I don't see some kind of year 2 fall off for him like some quarterbacks experience. Something else good is that they were able to keep Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator, in the building. Now, Cliff has had a reputation of not being able to construct offenses that last the whole season. They start hot, then they peter out as the season goes on, as teams catch up to his ideas. And he came by that reputation, honestly, in Arizona. But back then, his quarterback was Kyler Murray. And it might be better now, but back then, Kyler Murray did not study film very voraciously. It's pretty well documented. So maybe some of the reason that those Cardinals offenses petered out was because Kyler wasn't adjusting to what defenses were throwing at him new. Now, it's not that Cliff is blameless, but he's also a growing coach. And in 2024 with the Commanders, he displayed an ability to keep an offense going for a whole season. Sure, there was a lull in the middle, but that coincides with a Jaden Daniels rib injury. And then once Jaden Daniels recovered, the offense shot back up. And they made it to the NFC Championship game. So I'm really glad that Cliff Kingsbury is coming back, that Jaden Daniels doesn't have to start with a new offensive coordinator for year 2, that we get that cohesion going into the next season. So that's definitely a plus for this team. And if things keep going well, eventually the Commanders are going to lose Cliff as a head coach somewhere else. That's just the rub. But it's good for this year. Now, I do not get how they're allocating resources to the defensive line, pretty much at all. Letting Jonathan Allen walk is fine, but replacing him with a pretty big money deal to Javon Kinlaw, that doesn't make much sense to me. Now, GM Adam Peters was working for the Niners, their front office, before this job. And so it feels like one of those classic, I know better because I've been in the building with Kinlaw situations. Kinlaw probably doesn't deserve that money. This was one of the most widely panned free agent signings this offseason, and I have to agree with most people on that. And there were no draft picks to this side of the ball at all, particularly on the edge, because last year they picked Johnny Newton in the second round, and he fell to the second round because of injuries. That was a first-round talent, and they had Deron Payne. So maybe you don't fortify the interior, but at edge, not a single draft pick to even have just a high upside guy. They don't have anything better than replacement level on the outside. And if you look back through the years, man, have they had a tough time hitting on those picks. Chase Young didn't work out, and there have been a litany of defensive ends, and it's kind of tragic to look at. But that's the last regime. Adam Peters should be putting his mark on some new prospects and fortifying that defensive line. So that would have been a thing I wish I'd seen them do. I also think that lack of pure explosiveness at the running back position definitely puts a ceiling on this offense. I think that Jaden Daniels is a great runner himself, but defenses are just going to focus on him. And if they had a running back who could take it to the house at any given moment, put the fear of God into defenders, that would really open things up for Daniels. Brian Robinson isn't that. He's a consistent 4 yards a carry guy. Austin Eckler is clearly on his last legs. If the Commanders had a player like Derrick Henry, the way the Ravens do, that would really go a long way. And granted, I think that the running back room in Washington is fine. It's good enough. But we just saw the Eagles win a Super Bowl with elite running back play, and we saw how the Ravens offense looked. I just think that the margins are thin for these contenders, and I wish it was a little bit better next to Jaden Daniels in the backfield. Man, is this Terry McLaurin contract dispute intriguing. There's a lot of great reporting on it from both beat writers and national syndicates, so I'm not going to try to cover everything. But that's your wide receiver one, and he really was a part of Jaden Daniels' development in year one. The same way that I'm glad Cliff Kingsbury is still around for year two, I really hope Terry McLaurin's around for year two, because we've seen plenty of offenses think, our quarterback's so elite, we don't really need a wide receiver one. And especially when that quarterback's young, it really hampers the continued growth of that player. I get that Terry McLaurin turns 30 on September 15th, and that is a scary age for wide receivers. But I just also think that Terry's earned it. And more importantly, it's not like the Commanders are in some difficult cap place. They have a little bit of cap space left this year, but if they did a multi-year deal with McLaurin anyway, they could just put a little bit of that cap allocation into this year and put more of it into the next couple years. In 2026, they have the sixth most effective cap space, and in 2027, they have the second most. And they're not going to be paying Jaden Daniels more than they are right now throughout that time. His rookie deal will elapse through that time period. So I don't see the reason not to just reward McLaurin for all of his production during the lean years and how he's helped Jaden Daniels take his game to a higher level than anyone expected. Pay the man. And then it's going to be interesting to see how we all feel about the Laramie Tunsil trade at the end of this year. Laramie Tunsil is one of the better left tackles in the game when he's playing at his best. It wasn't his best last year, but maybe that was just a weird Texans offensive line ecosystem. But trading as much as you did for Laramie Tunsil definitely could bite them. They gave up a bunch this year, but they're also out a second and fourth round pick next year. It means that they only have 2 picks in the top 100 and nothing allotted right now from 100 to 150 at all. 5 total picks next draft. If Laramie Tunsil doesn't provide value, it's going to feel pretty sad when Commanders fans are watching their team only pick a couple of players, especially only a couple of higher up prospects that really are expected to pay dividends. And offensive line isn't the biggest deal when your quarterback is so mobile. Your quarterback can get away from pressure almost better than anyone in the league. I don't know why we're allocating so much to Laramie Tunsil. But on the flip side, if Laramie Tunsil plays great and this whole offensive line is better as a result of that, and then Jaden Daniels does more pocket operation and adds that layer to his game, it could unlock a huge ceiling. So I see a lot of variance in how this Laramie Tunsil trade will be looked at by the end of this season. The fulcrum for the Washington Commanders is 35-year-old inside linebacker Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner's a Hall of Famer, but it would be wrong to say he's ageless. He definitely took a bit of a step back athletically last year. But this defense still did well enough because Bobby Wagner's good at captaining everybody and getting them all in the right positions, and he sets a good tone as a tackler. But this defense has holes. There are some question marks in the secondary. The defensive line is constructed oddly. Last year, Wagner and his running mate, Frankie Louvu, as the linebacking core, was the best unit on the defense by far. And this year's defense is also counting on Bobby Wagner to still be great. So if he takes a step back, another one athletically, this could look dire. But if he stays the same player at least he was from last year, then they can hold it together. And this offense is going to win most of the games for this team anyway. So we'll see what Bobby Wagner's impact is and how the whole defense responds around that. The over-under for the Commanders is 9.5. And I will take the over. There's some concerns about the defense, of course, and Jaden Daniels is a running quarterback where there's always risk of injury. But I just believe too strongly in Jaden Daniels and in the continuity on offense to think that this team won't reach 10 wins. And they get the Falcons, Dolphins, and Seahawks as their unique opponents. And that's definitely a bunch of teams with major question marks. It leads to their schedule being the easiest of the four in the NFC East. So I will be taking the over with the Commanders. On to the Philadelphia Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champ and the byproduct of architect Howie Roseman. He enters year 16 with the club. He hasn't been the general manager for that whole span. There was a brief period starting in 2013 when Chip Kelly came in as head coach and assumed all the player personnel decisions. But Howie remained in the front office in an executive vice president role and then took back general managing duties, and they've won 2 Super Bowls since. So just calling it year 16 feels correct since this team is such an imprint of Howie Roseman's general managing style. A thing that's always good about the Philadelphia Eagles is their approach to the offensive line. When you have one of the best offensive line coaches in Jeff Stoutland in the building, you can take risks. And that's exactly what they did last year, bringing in Mekhi Becton and him having a career year helping win their Super Bowl. But then they let Mekhi Becton go instead of giving him a payday, knowing that he might not be worth what he's going to get on the open market. Instead, they traded for Kenyon Green from the Texans. He was also a former first-round pick, just like Becton was with the Jets. And it's a risk, but I like it because this team did it. And they have their own draft pick, Tyler Steen, who's going to compete for that right guard job that Becton vacated. And they always have a few other late round dart throws, like this year with, in particular, I really like Cameron Williams in the 6th round. He was too young to go into this year's draft. He probably should have stayed at Texas for another year. But if he's going to go into the draft, getting picked in the 6th round by the Eagles is a perfect place for him to develop. So always good that they're stocking the cupboard with guys for Jeff Stoutland to coach up. Also, as of this recording, they're spending just $64 million on their defense. For context, in their own division, the Cowboys are the next lowest team at $128 million, and the Giants and Commanders are above that. So the fact that they're able to spend so little, yet get such a good defense, it's a testament to Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator. It's a testament to Howie Roseman making great selections on that side of the ball. Of course, the bill will come due on Jalen Carter. He's going to get a massive payday. Later on, Quinyon Mitchell will probably earn a good cornerback payday, and the rest of the other young pieces, maybe they will too. But for now, they're able to keep spending low on that side of the ball so they can keep an amazing offensive infrastructure around Jalen Hurts, the quarterback. Yet, even within this defensive spending model, they decided to retain Zach Bond. I think that was an awesome move because their other linebackers are a rookie in Jahad Campbell coming off injury, and then Nakobe Dean, a veteran, but also coming off injury. So keeping Zach Bond in the building so you have consistency at linebacker. Sure, it was $17 million a year. That's towards the top of the linebacker market, but it's okay because they're offsetting that with so many other rookie contracts and so much other smart defensive building. I could actually only come up with one truly bad aspect of this team, not two like for the other franchises. Makes sense. This is a Super Bowl champion that's going to contend again. But safety depth is clearly a bit of a red flag. Reed Blankenship is a fine replacement level safety, sometimes plays a little better than that. But next to him, they're relying on Sidney Brown in his third year, or Andrew Makuba, who's a rookie. And my issue is that Brown played 87 snaps. Obviously, Makuba has played none. And they couldn't have more different skill sets. So whoever you're lining up next to Blankenship is going to give up something meaningful that an offense can attack. In Brown's case, he's got a 211-pound frame that he loves to throw around. He's a superb athlete, but his vision is scattered and some of his coverage ability is a little stiff. On the flip side, Makuba is a loose coverage player who really keeps everything in front of him, and he has the fluid hips to get deep when things get behind him. But he's small. He's 186 pounds, and he's not a great tackler. He's got shorter arms, too, so not only does he not bring a lot of force, but he doesn't wrap up as well. And so you're sacrificing something meaningful with one of these safeties. Also, God forbid Reed Blankenship goes down, and you have to start both. They could be fine. I mean, Vic Fangio's a good coach, and there should be a benefit of the doubt with this front office and who they pick. But I'm still kind of scared. And that was an issue in 2023 when the spine of their defense, linebackers and safeties, just couldn't keep up with other teams. So I hope that isn't too thin of a safety room. One of the biggest things we'll have to watch for is whether how much they used Saquon Barkley in the 2024 season will have adverse effects on his ability to contribute in 2025. The man had 482 touches between the regular season and the postseason last year, and it was beautiful. It won them a championship. But it would be extremely rare for a player who was used that much to have even close to as productive a season. And unfortunately, knock on wood, a healthy following season. There's not much of a track record for it, if any. So I really hope Saquon's healthy. He's a wonderful guy and an electric player, and I'm rooting for him. But I don't think the Eagles should rely on him to touch the ball that many times. And so what does that mean for the offense with a new play caller coming in? We'll see. And there's a lot of youth on the back seven of this defense. And I'm not just referring to the safety depth that I talked about earlier. There's new cornerbacks coming in. They lost Darius Slay in free agency. There's new linebackers. Jahad Campbell, I mentioned, is a rookie, and they want him to play a big role, but he still needs to see the game better. The reason he was a first-round talent was his athleticism, not yet his processing. Yet he's missing some of this offseason due to injury. So we'll see how he's able to take to the field early. And then it's not right to just say that Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, their two phenom cornerbacks from last year, are going to play at an even higher level next year. Cornerback play and development, they're not linear. It's one of the most volatile positions in the league because it's so athletically challenging and it's so dependent on scheme and matchup. So while I believe in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, just putting it in pen that they're going to be elite defenders would be the wrong move. So I'll be interested to see how this young back seven comes together, and it's partially why I'm so glad they retained Zach Bond to have some level of older veteran consistency back there. I do believe in the possibilities, but it is an unknown for now. New offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo is the fulcrum for this team. Now, he's never called plays at any level. There's reason to believe that he'll maintain a lot of the offensive ecosystem from before because he's worked with Nick Sirianni, the head coach, for many years, both when they were in Indianapolis together and for many years here in Philadelphia. But there's risk, and we saw this pattern before where the Eagles make the Super Bowl in 2022. They lose Shane Steichen. He becomes a head coach. They get a new offensive coordinator in Brian Johnson, who they promote from within. He had been the quarterback's coach. And then the offense pretty much flops. The next year, they go get Kellen Moore. They make the Super Bowl, in fact, win it. They lose Kellen Moore as a new head coach of the Saints. They promote Kevin Patullo from within. So that pattern may spook you, and since he has no play calling experience, that could be bad. But there's definitely hope there. And if he maintains what has been a really strong offense and just leans on the talent on the team, it could also be great. Since the over-under is 11.5, I very slightly lean to the under. Now, I still think this is a good team, but they were really healthy last year. They were in the top 10 in adjusted games lost, a stat that measures basically how healthy your roster was. So if they get some regression to or past the mean this coming year, especially if it's one of their most important players like Saquon Barkley missing time due to injury, that really lowers the ceiling. And there's too much in flux. New offensive coordinator and a lot of youth on defense. But I still believe in this team. This isn't going to be like 2023, where they start out the gates hot, but then they lose 5 of 6 regular season games, and they absolutely whimper in a 32-9 loss to the Buccaneers in round 1 of the playoffs. I don't see that happening. I see them probably winning 11 games, probably getting a wild card spot, if not winning the division if other teams falter, and still being competitive down the stretch because they can lean on their offensive line and if Saquon's healthy, their run game as a whole. But it's hard for me to bet that it's more likely with 12 and over, just simply because of the risks. There you have it, the NFC East. There's 3 good teams in this division, and I'm ultimately going to pick Washington to win it. I think that Jaden Daniels, his ascendancy is here. Their schedule is also markedly easier than that of the Eagles, and I already detailed the risks I'm seeing with the Eagles, though I do think the Eagles will be competitive. I just happen to like Washington, especially at their plus 220 odds compared to the Eagles being favorites right now. And the Cowboys should be better. Again, not an elite team, unless Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons are playing like the best players at their positions, which is possible, but it would have to be all 3 of them. So otherwise, I still see a competitive team that's threatening for a wild card spot. And with the Giants, sure, not a good team, probably picking in the top 5. But there's more to be excited about than usual. The defensive line I talked about. Plus, I didn't talk about wide receiver Malik Neighbors at all, but he's a budding superstar. I left him out because the quarterback play might not be good enough to unlock him yet, but he will have a great career. Hopefully, it's in New York and they don't waste him. But there's stuff to be happy about there, even if 2025 is probably a down year. And that's it. That's the NFC East. Thank you so much for watching this preview. If you enjoyed it, I'd love it if you liked the video, subscribed to the channel, and shared it with friends and family. It would mean the world to me. Next up, we'll be doing the AFC East, and then both of the Wests and both of the Norths will follow after that. So thank you again for being here. This was Light Boxes. I'm Rob Ballantine, and I'll see you soon.